All right, and this is our last segment on test taking skills. And I thought it would be a good idea to do some practice questions if you haven't hit the previous ones. The first one kind of goes over all the stuff that you're wanting to keep in mind prior to the start of the test. And then the second one really covers a lot of the anxiety-related issues during multiple choice tests. And then the third one really talks about the mechanics of multiple choice tests. All right, so here's the first question. Which of the following statements is least likely to be true? Well, this is one of those, the qualifier word is making the statement into a negative. So the least likely to be true would be the most false statement. So you're actually looking among your answer choices for the most false statement. Here's another one. So in this particular one, Sally went to the store, and it gives you a whole bunch of information about where the store is, and then she's going to buy groceries, and what groceries she was going to get. And the question is actually at the end. It says, how much change will Sally have if she takes $10 with her? So now you have some information. You know what you're looking for. You're looking for how much is she going to have left if she buys these groceries, and she had originally had $10. So first off, you've got to take the information for the groceries from the question, tally all that up, and then take that information away from the $10 that she took with her to get your answer. So this is one of those questions where the question itself is at the end, but there is information within the other parts of the question that you need to answer it. Unlike this one, where this particular question, it too has the question at the very end. It's the last 5 words, how are lakes typically formed. There's a whole bunch of information on Ackerson Lake in Michigan before that has absolutely nothing to do with the question. So it's really just kind of like filler or distraction. So keep a lookout for that too. And in this case, you wouldn't use any of that information. You would only use those last 5 words to determine the answer to the question. All right, here's just some tips on multiple choice questions. So don't get sidetracked by none of the above, both A and D, or all of the above when you're looking for qualifier answers. So if you've got a most likely or least likely, there's not going to be more than one answer. It's just one answer. So keep that in mind when you are looking at your qualifiers. Be critical on what those qualifiers would mean. You know, if we're talking last step, well, there's a last step. So you're looking for one answer. And also keep in mind that studies have shown that when you have answer choices that have a none of the above or all of the above, those are correct 52% of the time. So if there's no qualifier in your question and your answer has the none of the above or all of the above, especially if you're guessing, that might be a good option. Correct answer choices are hardly repeated consecutively. Now this one, I want you to keep in mind the fact that we're talking about a test that is in paper format and printed as it was created. A lot of times these tests get put into test banks, electronic test banks, and then they will randomly present them to the tester. So they're not necessarily in the order in which they were originally created. So when a test is originally created, statistics have shown that people seldom repeat the same answer choices. In other words, you wouldn't have 2 questions, or very often you wouldn't have 2 questions, one right after the other, that both had the answer choice of C. And again, so take this, take some critical thought into how your tests are presented when you think about this one. Because if it is a randomized computer test, this is not going to be helpful. Also, if you're taking a paper test, a lot of times tests are arranged chronologically, with the oldest information at the beginning and the newest information at the end. So sometimes if you're taking one of those paper tests, or even a computer test where the questions have not been randomized, so it is in the same format that its paper version would have been in, chances are that if you start at the end, that information is more recent, more current, you've been over it, and it's a better it's probably a little easier to recall in your memory. You kind of get on a roll, you feel a little bit better about the test. So people will do a little better sometimes on a test like that when they start at the end. Longest answers are often correct. That is just a fact. So if you're truly guessing and you're stuck between two options, you might do better with picking the longer. Now, it's not always correct, but they are often correct. So that's a good one to use. Rephrase a question as a statement, inserting answer choices into the statement. Then ask yourself, which of those seems more true? So sometimes it's hard to think of it when it's not quite as concrete, but if you can place it into a statement that includes both the question and the answer choice, and then see, does that seem true? That can be helpful. All right. So how about this one? Most traffic accidents happen because of what factor? Now here we go in that qualifier, right? So if this particular one had an all of the above or none of the above, that would not be a good option here because it has that qualifier most. So we're looking for one of these that is the most. And the other thing to think about here is all of these could be contributors to traffic accidents. We're just looking for the one that's the most. And so paying attention to those qualifiers, what the question is actually asking, and what the options are all very important in multiple choice tests. How were the continents formed? Now here's one of those ones where the correct answer is the longest answer. So I just kind of wanted you to get a feel for that. The other ones are partially true, some of them. So earthquakes, yes, partially because they were a result of tectonic movement. The large bodies of water, well, they were moving with the movement of the plains. And there were some volcanic eruptions happening. So there is some truth to many of these. But the most correct one, the most complete answer is B, and it is the longest. All right, this is a good one because it shows, one, determining an answer. You can determine it sometimes based on the wording. What makes sense if I were to place the answer choices? So we're going to do that here. In the morning after showering, I ate. Dressed, off. No, that does not make sense. In the morning after showering, I eat off. No, that also does not make sense. In the morning after showering, I dry off. That does make sense. And then get dressed also makes sense. So now, after placing the answers into the question, I have been able to determine what makes the most sense. And you'll notice that there is A and C, which have the same words. They are just backwards. So there's dressed and dry, and then dry and dressed. So I want to show you this because it is important in showing the order as well. So it's not enough just to get the right words. You have to put them in the correct order for the blanks. And so in this case, C would be the correct answer because first dry and then dressed goes into the sentence. And so that is the correct order. All right, here's another one. Select the proper order of steps. Okay, so now we're looking for steps, and it's an automatic vehicle. We're trying to put it in drive and get it to go forward from a parked off position. So some important pieces. When you look at steps, a lot of times the easiest thing is to look at either the first or the last step to kind of start eliminating. Well, if you're wanting it to drive, you're going to have to let off the brakes so it can move in a forward motion. So 3 of the 4 have let off the brakes. So I can eliminate C based on the fact that it says to put the brake on, which would not make my car move forward. Now, it also tells me this is an automatic vehicle, and I know from driving an automatic vehicle that I have to have the brake pushed in before I turn the car on or the car won't turn on. So there's only one that shows that, and that is A. That's the very first step, push on the brake. So these are some ways that you can just kind of eliminate based on first and last. So when you're looking at steps, sometimes it's helpful to critically think, what's that last step? What's the first step in this? So you can start eliminating options. Okay, and here's some more tips. If you have only one answer choice left, choose it, even if you aren't sure why it's right. If you've eliminated everything and you've got something left, that's got to be it. Now, worry about why it was right later. If two choices overlap or mean essentially the same thing, both are probably incorrect unless there is a both of these options, and we'll probably look at one of those. Notice partner choices. In other words, here it shows you opposites. So if you have a right and wrong or a night and day, usually the answer choice is one of the opposites. Let's look at some practice. So here's a good one for a couple different reasons. On Thanksgiving, I served the turkey on a blank. Okay, you'll notice that A and B, bag and purse, very similar items, right? So the chances are is it's neither one of those because they mean essentially the same thing. A bag and a purse, they're both very similar. So we could probably eliminate both A and B. Now that leaves us with C and D. Now you will notice that one, they both start with P, and they are really close in spelling. One is platter, and the other is planter. The only difference is one has a T and one has an N. These are super important differences. The correct answer, of course, is C. But if you're in a hurry and you're not paying attention, it wouldn't be very hard to accidentally put D down on a test. So it's really important when you see those answer choices, and they will come up, that all have the same beginning or they're really close in length, things like that. Really, really be careful on which ones you choose and make sure that it is the right one for your question. All right, what side of the road do drivers in the United States of America drive on? So on this one, we've got opposite. We've got a left and a right. So we know that our answer is probably one of our two opposites. And it is, of course, right? We drive on the right side of the road here in the U.S. And these are all just options for you to see these practice questions and see what we mean when we say these different things. When we say, hey, make sure you're paying attention to this, make sure you're paying attention to that. This is just a chance for you to see it. So I hope you found test taking skills to be helpful, and I will be putting up another study skills video soon, maybe on highlighting or note taking. But for now, we're going to sign out.